Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a special session of your Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. Today is September 28th, 2023. Before I call this meeting to order, I want to announce that we have individuals attending remotely as well as on site. All participants joining by phone should please mute their phones when not speaking to avoid any background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak, so the public that is participating knows exactly who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and its current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General's office. Also, please make sure that you speak at an audible level so you can be heard and so your comments can be recorded for record with the clerk. Tonight, we have a special session with our local school district representatives, and this was at the request of some of our commissioners. So the mayor's office and the administrator's office facilitated this meeting on the commission's behalf. I will now call the meeting to order. Clerk, roll call.
Good evening. You are hereby notified that I have called a special session of the Unified Government to be conducted in a hybrid format on Thursday, September 2023 at 5 p.m. for a special session regarding roll call. Stites.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Gross.
Here.
Townsend, we have an absence. Kiernan, we have an absence memo. Ramirez.
Here.
Johnson. Kane. Markley, we have an absence memo.
Here. Thank you, clerk. Again, this evening, we're going to hear from our educational ecosystem here in Wyandotte County, which includes all four of the school districts in Wyandotte County, as well as our community college. Again, this was requested by our commission, and a special thanks to my staff liaison, retired USD 500 school superintendent and principal, assistant school superintendent and principal, Mr. JD Rios, on helping coordinate this event that you see here tonight. We're going to allow for various members of the leadership of the school districts to come forward and present topics related to their budgets and also engage in discussions with our commissions about the same. And so at this time, I'll ask if our administrator, do you have any comments?
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Rios, if you could come to the mic and facilitate the meeting.
All right. Well, good evening. It is a pleasure to be before you again with our education community. But before we start, Mayor, you had requested that the Medical Society Foundation address our commission. They are partners with USD 500 and Turner and have interest in being partners with others. And so this is taking the place of our quarterly education coalition meeting. We meet with the superintendents and the community college every quarter. And in that, we have discussions and we try to bring forward new partnerships, collaborative efforts that we see meeting a need for our community. This is definitely an organization that does that. So we want to have them present first. And then after that, we will have the Bonner Springs Edwardsville superintendent. He will give a dual presentation. He will explain to you the funding formula that the school systems follow in achieving their mill. And it's much different from what the unified government exercises. Then after Bonner Springs, we'll have Turner, followed by Piper, and then the Kansas City, Kansas public schools, and we will conclude with the community college. After the presentations, that is when we will open the floor for questions and dialogue. Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, oops. Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Bradford. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Kansas City, Kansas I'm sorry, the Kansas City Medical Society Foundation. We are a public charity, not a foundation. And I really appreciate the invitation to come and present to you today. I have been partnering with the Community Health Improvement Plan committees on, or rather the Kansas City Medical Society Foundation has been partnering with the Kansas City or the Community Health Improvement Plan committees on education to employment pipeline and post-secondary education for about 5 years. And we are delighted to debut to you our new website called .healthcareers.com. This was a project, if you want to bring up the presentation. This was a project that was truly collaborative, truly community-based. If you want to advance to the next slide. Oh, I can do that. Very exciting. Technology is so exciting. This was a project that really was very community-centered. We have a number of our key partners, including the Public Health Department, the CHIP, KCK Public Schools, and other educational and healthcare entities listed here. This was a project that came out of a couple of unique perspectives related to health access and health equity. And so we saw that it matters if there is racial and ethnic and linguistic alignment between clinicians and their patients. It impacts communication. It impacts everything from the development of a diagnosis to treatment plan. And it is, I think I advanced too much. And it is, there we go. I did advance too much. And it is reflective of feedback that we got from major healthcare employers in Wyandotte County, major and small healthcare employers in Wyandotte County, which identified that they were actually desperate for qualified, trained people of color, people who speak more than one language, people with immigrant backgrounds, people with diverse backgrounds in general to enter healthcare careers. So a little bit about the Kansas City Medical Society Foundation. We are a very small agency. There are 7 of us on staff, but together we have over 50 years combined experience in charity healthcare, particularly within Wyandotte County. Our recognition that community health disparities are often rooted in patient-provider communications, and that community health can best be served by a provider force, a workforce that reflects the people who are being served. Great. This is our project history. As I mentioned, we've been working on this particular project for quite a number of years, actually since 2017. In 2018 was when 2 CHIP committees got together and really got the ball rolling. These were a committee from the Health Access and another committee from the secondary education, the jobs and education focus areas. So working together, we identified that what we need are careers that are high need, high impact, and high wage, and that we would focus those careers on reaching people of color, people who speak more than one language, and people who have an immigrant background. So therefore, our end product, I did it again, our end product is bilingual, it's interactive, and it provides career exploration for students and families. There you go. And that is it. And can you bring up the website? So I shared with Monica, sorry, I'd already forgotten, Monica, that this is the interactive part of the presentation. Some of you may be prepared for this, some of you may not. If you want to click English, because I don't speak Spanish, click Start. So this is part of our career guide. This will take the student and their parents through a series of questions and direct them to some career options for them to consider. So I'm going to call on some of you to answer these questions. All right, I see a few nods. So Commissioner Bynum, you were nodding the most frequently. You are up. Which topic interests you? Human body, technology, human mind, medicine and its effect on the body, or all of the above?
Human body and how it works.
There you go. All right, next question. Commissioner Ramirez, what describes you best? Do you like working hands-on? Do you like working with people? Do you like really solving complex problems through critical thinking?
As I am a kinesthetic learner, I will say I like working hands-on.
Hands-on. And how, let's see, I'm going to pick on Commissioner Kane because I did warn him. How do you respond in stressful situations? You remain calm and quiet? Do you like to talk it through, or do you prefer to work in peaceful environments? Peaceful environments it is. Okay, excellent. County administrator, how do you feel about needles, blood, bodily fluids? Are you cool and calm? Not much phases you? Can you handle it, but a little squeamish, or no? No. Second one, can handle it, but All right, let's see, who haven't I picked on? Commissioner Burrows, pick a statement that best describes you. Do you like routines and set schedules, or do you need variety in your workday? Variety in the workday it is. All right, Mayor Garner, favorite class from high school. Of those listed, I recognize it's not all high school classes. Gym, math, science, visual arts, music, home ec.
I have to say science.
Science it is. All right, who have I not picked on? Commissioner Stites, you're up. Ideal work schedule, 9 to 5, flexible, or make your own? All righty there. And Davis? All right, I can't see his name. Commissioner Davis, it's the weekend. What are you doing? Playing a board game? Sports?
Game, Monopoly. Let's do it.
Monopoly it is. Okay. Let's see. Monica, I'm just going to pick on you. What's your goals? Do you think when you were 18, did you want to make money as soon as possible? Did you want to support your family and commit maybe 2 years? You want to have nice things? You want to be in charge. Amen. All right. And let's see. Assistant County Administrator, how much of a people person are you? Do you like talking with people? Do you work best with a team? Do you like working on a team, but you don't want to talk to people every day? Or do you want to work on your own in a quiet environment? Third. All right, one more. Who haven't I picked on? All right. The attorney, the county attorney. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. What motivates you most in the healthcare industry? Sorry, I need better glasses. Do you want to impact the world through tech advancements? Do you want to work with people and their families one-on-one? Do you want to create a better healthcare system for the next generation? Do you want to find cures? Or do you want to just make sure everyone has access to basic healthcare needs? Number 5. All right, and then we hit submit. Congratulations, everyone. You are Holy Knight, a primary care provider. Congratulations. So if you want to scroll down, Monica. There you go. Click on learn more. And scroll down a little bit more. Now, here is some information about becoming a primary care physician, including nearby educational funding programs. And when possible, when it applies, we've highlighted the things for which we have there may be potential workforce partnership funding eligible, because workforce partnership has been a partner in this development. We've had partnerships with the University of Kansas, with Donnelly College, with KCKCC, in developing this product over these years. And so we are able to highlight, just click on one of those, Monica. Yeah, sure, KCUMB. So we've been able to highlight, oh, this is UMKC, not KCUMB. Oh, that's an error. We'll get that fixed tomorrow. We're able to highlight particular career guidelines or particular career pathways through these links. And so if a family clicks on this, it'll take them to UMKC School of Medicine and the particular pathways that they need to follow. That really, if you want to close that down, it's okay. That really is my entire presentation. I know you have a lot of heavy lifting. I wanted to give you something light to steer you up. So my call to action for all of you is, as you're considering funding and as you're considering impacting the students of our community, note that there are many strengths that this community has, that this community can build on. And there are many folks who will come to the table in collaboration. And I think the folks who will present after me have been working very hard to help their students consider their careers, consider their futures, and prepare for really making a difference in this community. And I want to raise up those partners as well. And thank you all. And thanks again to the health department for leading the community health improvement process. It's been a tremendous partner with us for years. Thank you all.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Dan Berngart, Superintendent of USD 204 Bonner Springs. I'm going to tell you up front, there's going to be no test. So you got that to look forward to. I hope you have my handout. So I'm just going to go over that. So the reason I'm talking about the history of the mill levy in schools is because I'm probably the only administrator who was around in 1992 when we had our biggest change. So in 1992, that was kind of a bellwether time for schools, especially schools that would be considered poor schools, schools with lower valuation than other schools. Before 1992, there wasn't a lot of equity in the school funding because most of the funding came locally. And then there was some state funding. In 1992, the funding became more equitable across because it became amount per pupil, as opposed to what you can raise locally, amount per pupil. So people had wide swings in the mill levy. Actually, the new law put caps on how much mill levy you can raise. So that was probably the biggest thing it did. It also, by doing that, kind of flattened out mill levies for schools across the state, with the exception of bond and interest. So I'm just going to start with the first one, and really that's the general fund. And so the general fund is 20 mills. It's 20 mills in Bonner Springs. It's 20 mills in Ness City, Kansas. It's 20 mills in Kansas City, Kansas. So no matter where you're at, it's 20 mills. As part of the revenue neutral rate, it is not part of the revenue neutral rate because it's actually by statute raised by the legislature, 20 mills. So 20 mills is ours. Now, we receive funding because we're not considered a very wealthy district. So within our 20 mills, for every dollar we raise locally, we get $3, which is a pretty good turnaround for us. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But how do we generate money with the general fund? Well, we do it by student head count. This gets complicated. Remember, I didn't write the law. Tom may have. So with that in mind, each person counts one. Every kid you have in school is one, okay? And then for every student who, we have something called a high enrollment and a low enrollment weighting. And so we used to have just a low enrollment weighting where schools under 600, which is the majority of school districts in the state of Kansas, received extra funding per pupil based on the fact that they had smaller classes and they needed that money to hire teachers. But then people got upset about that, and then there's a higher enrollment weighting. So we receive the high enrollment weighting. We don't receive the low enrollment weighting. There are a few districts in the middle that receive none. but it's a very complicated formula. Transportation, every kid counts a little bit more if we transport them, and they have to be 2.5 miles away from school. I believe in most all of our districts, we transport a lot more kids than 2.5, that are closer than 2.5 miles away. In Edwardsville, the majority of our students live on the south side of town, and to get to school, they'd have to cross the railroad tracks and a highway. And that seems just a little hard to do. So we run buses for kids who are closer than 2.5 miles away due to issues in the neighborhood. Career and tech ed. So career and tech ed would be like wood shop, welding. We have a LPN program, home ec. Those kind of programs are called vocational programs. We receive weightings for students who are in those programs because they cost more money. You know, an English class, an English teacher, that's a book teacher, but these other classes cost quite a bit more money to do. So we receive additional funding there. Bilingual education is for students whose first native language is not English. So we receive additional funding for those students because it takes a little bit more to work with them and get them to our standard of language. Then we have a thing called at-risk pupils. So you receive funding for at-risk pupils, and these are pupils who qualify for a free lunch. So that doesn't mean every student who qualifies for free lunch is at risk. It doesn't mean every student who pays for their lunch isn't at risk. Basically, that's just a funding factor. So every student who qualifies for free lunch is considered at risk, and we receive additional money for that. And then if there's a high density, meaning a lot of students in one area receive free lunch, you also get a little bit more money for that. And the reason for that is lots of these students who are at risk, who qualify for free lunch, maybe come from a single home family where they don't have the resources. They may have both parents and both parents are working 2 to 3 jobs, but they still don't have the resources. They may not have computers. They may not have access to some of the things other students have. So it takes a little bit more to educate those students. Special education is an interesting one. I don't know if I can go down page or not. It's right there. Okay. Special education is interesting because it's not based on students, but it's based on how many teachers we hire. So for every teacher we hired last year, we received $30,800. Now it's important to note that our base pay last year, if I have that in there, our base pay last year, or for this year, is $45,650. But we only received $30,800 per teacher. And so one thing you might read about or hear about is the school districts wanting to have special education fully funded. When special education first came out, it was brought to us that it'd be fully funded, meaning you'd have your money for your classroom, but then you'd also have special education money. Well, it's never quite been fully funded except for a couple of years. So that is another one. So that is our, and then virtual education. We have a virtual school, and so we have students go to virtual education, probably 12 to 15, but we still have a virtual school. So that's the general fund, 20 mills, and it's based upon your student head count. Then comes the local option budget, and the local option budget is capped at 33% of your general fund. So whatever amount of money you raise in your general fund, you can only get up to 33% for your LOB. And once again, those two funds are what we call operating funds. We pay teachers out of them, we buy books, we buy buses, we do all those things. The next fund is capital outlay. Capital outlay is a fund that's only specific to keeping your buildings up. So that pays for, it can pay for custodians, it can pay for maintenance workers, it pays for new roofs, pays for new air conditioning, and that can only be 8 mills. That cannot be greater than 8 mills. And that fund is the fund I kind of label as pay me now or pay me later. Because if you don't keep your buildings up, sooner or later, you're going to have to run a bond issue to do things you didn't do here. So, and none of the capital outlay money can be spent on instruction. So out of those 8 mills, you can't hire a teacher, you can't buy school books. That is specifically for instruction. And then the last one is bond and interest. Bond and interest is approved by the voters. So we cannot issue a bond, we cannot make a bond improvement unless we have a vote and we win that election of 51% or more, over 50%. So that is really chosen by the voters. So that mill levy is set also because once you pass that bond, you have to pay for the bond. So you really can't lower that mill levy because you have to pay for your bonds. And only money raised in bond and interest can pay for bond and interest. So only the money in that fund can pay for your bonds. It can't be used for anything else. It can't be used for capital outlay. It can't be used for instruction. It's just meant to pay the bonds. Now there's some other funds in there. There's special funds, and I'm not going to go into those. Most school districts just run those four. So any questions about that? Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted to go back to capital outlay. When I hear capital, for us, it's like roads and bridges and fire trucks. But I thought I heard you say it's for instruction.
No, you can't. You cannot spend it for instruction.
Cannot spend.
And then not spend it. It can be used for roofs,
Okay,
maintenance workers. We have roads of our own.
okay.
Roads. Yeah.
I
And
misheard you.
and the legislature restricted that because schools like to move money to instruction because that's what we do. But by making it just specifically for capital projects, the goal is to make schools maintain their property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So then, how does the revenue neutral rate affect schools? Well, part of the issue was when the revenue neutral rate first came out, I went with a couple of other superintendents and testified that schools probably shouldn't be part of that. And you can tell how well that went. But the reason why is because we have certain fixes on our mill levy. So we can't go higher than 20 mills for the general fund. So what I did for our board was I just kind of put some graphs together and spelled it out for you. So within our mill levy, last year, we had 20 mills for the general fund. And this year, if it was going to be revenue neutral, it'd be 18.51. But it can't be revenue neutral. So out of the gate, we have to raise 20 mills. So if we're going to be revenue neutral with all funds, we'd really have to lower some other funds just to keep that one where it is. Supplemental general would be 10.941, capital outlay 6.36, and bond and interest 11.3. But probably more importantly is being revenue neutral represents a number here, right? It's a dollar number, but then you have to really take it down to what does that look like for an individual? And so I'm going to turn the page. If you turn the page, I have the 22-23 mill rate summary. And I have to put this a little bit farther away so I can read it. So this was our mill rate for last year. And within the general fund, if you go across, I did a $200,000 house. That's probably median in my neighborhood or in the city of Bonner Springs. Then you see that minus $40,000 reduction. And people really question what that is. Well, when they passed the law for the general fund back in 1992, they said that anybody who has a house less than $20,000 shouldn't have to pay taxes on that house for the general fund. And so that was, am I correct? Yeah. And so that stayed that way till 2 years ago. And somebody finally figured out that there's probably not a house anywhere in the state of Kansas for $20,000. So they raised it to 40. Why that is, I still have no idea. But then you take it to the market value, which becomes 160. You take it times your assessment factor. You take it times your assessed valuation, times your mill rate. And so within that $200,000 house, you end up with $1,107.24 taxes that go to USD 204. Okay, so the problem is not keeping your mill levy flat, because essentially if you kept your mill levy flat and the value of your house was flat, that would stay the same, wouldn't it? Whatever you paid last year, you paid this year. The problem is the valuation keeps going up, and that's what we hear from patrons. So my property went up 12%. I don't know what everybody else's did, but mine went up 12%. So I used 12% in this formula. So I took the house and I added $24,000 to it. I do well with math, but I like really precise numbers. So, so once again, a $200,000 house, minus 40,000. You have the 22, 23. Now we go to 23, 24. Oh my goodness, 40,000 has turned into 42,000 and some change. Well, they moved that factor again. Still don't know why, but now it's 42,000. So overall in the general fund, what it's going to cost one individual in our district for a year is $50.49. If we don't stay revenue neutral and keep the mill levy about where it was. Okay. Then if you turn the page, you will see the 22-23 budget, and then you'll also see the 23-24 budget. And overall, amongst all the other three funds, you're going to find out that the total for an individual with a $200,000 house for those three funds is $118.24, or right at about $11, $12 a month. That's really what my board wanted to know was, what does that cost the individual? Not necessarily this big number, because, you know, part of where that money went to was a raise for our teachers. Our teachers got a $2,000 raise. And I've had some people say, you know, a $2,000 raise, that's exciting. But if you put that against a 2,080 hour work year, that's $1 an hour, maybe a little bit less. And so, so it was good for our teachers. And we do appreciate the board doing that for instructors. But when you measure that out over 12 months, it's not quite what it seems. So that money was kind of spent before we started. So any questions about revenue neutral rate? You might checking my math?
Commissioner Rea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. More clarification questions. So the minus reduction for general fund, that's set by the legislature.
That's set by the legislature. Yes, sir.
In the funding bill, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I figured that's what it was. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
It's one of those anomalies that nobody really understands anymore, but it's okay. Because they don't do that for the other three funds. So fuzzy mouth. There you go. Funding is equalized. So it's important to note that funding is equalized. And the goal, once again, is if you have 20 mills, you have 33% LOB, 8 mills tops on your capital outlay. Whether you live in Bonner Springs or you live in Ulysses, Kansas, you're going to kind of get the same mill rate for those three major funds, right? So if you go down to this chart, Wyandotte County mill levy rates, and if you take the general fund, the supplemental general, and the capital outlay, you find out that last year, without bond and interest or any special mill rates, it was about 40 mills right across the board for every school district here in Wyandotte County. So that kind of shows you where some of our caps are. I think the average is 43, and only in a couple of extreme cases does it go much above 43 or below 40. Okay, and then finally, state aid is equalized. So in our general fund, we raised $4,860,065. But in state aid, we received $14,728,000. And so for every dollar we collected locally, we received 3. That's important to note. Remember, in the general fund, we can't lower the general fund. But in the supplemental general fund, for about every dollar we raised, we received $1. So if we lower that to be revenue neutral, if we lower $100,000, we lose $200,000. If you lower $300,000, you lose $600,000, because for every dollar in local taxes you don't collect, that's $1 in state tax you don't receive. Does that make sense to everybody? Finally, we have capital outlay. We receive a quarter for about every dollar, and bond and interest about 24 cents for every dollar. And that changes, remember, that changes from district to district based upon your wealth. And the way they figure out wealth is this huge equation, but really it's taking the number of students divided by your valuation. So if somebody says that's not right, it truly is not right, because it's a big equation. That's kind of how you do it. Any other questions?
Commissioner Brennan.
I thought that the first 20 mills that money is collected and goes to the state.
It does, goes to the state and it comes back.
and then comes back. But I thought the 20 mils was non-negotiable.
It is non-negotiable.
Okay, so you can't
No, we can't.
lower that.
No. No, that's why I said I can't lower that.
Okay, the
Like
first
with the-
20 is being collected, period.
Everybody collects.
Okay, okay. I thought I heard you say that. Can I ask you on, not that one, but the slide right before? Reading on the middle section. Again, the general fund, which I think is the 20 mils. That this year over last year is an increase. If I were in USD 204, this year over last year on the 20 mils that can't be changed is an increase of $50.49. Is
Yes,
that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then on the bottom part are the 3 additional
Yes.
mill levies. And those equal an additional 118.24.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so but then on the next page, it says the total tax increase on a house with a valuation of 200,000 in USD 204 would be 118.24.
Oh, so the 118.24 is those 3.
Right.
In a bond.
Because it's actually that plus
Plus the 50.
$50. Okay,
118 is kind of what we do.
I just wanted to make sure I was understanding what you were telling.
And I tried to write it out as well as I could for future reference.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jason Dando. I'm the superintendent in Turner. It's great to see everyone again. I am going to share some updates that are taking place in our district this year, things that are new to us and might be of interest to you. I'll do my best to try to tie them into the context of how they were funded in our budget. We're excited to open up a couple of brand new preschool classrooms in our school district. We had some unused space in an elementary building that currently houses 560 kids. It's a large structure and our preschool numbers have just exploded. So we offer both a 3- and 4-year-old preschool. Our current enrollment in that program is 195. We were able to build out 2 brand new spaces that are right next to each other. They have a collapsible glass wall and then furnish and outfit those spaces for kids, which were filled to capacity by the time school started. And we paid for these improvements with our 2019 bond funds. We passed a bond a few years ago, primarily to build a new middle school and make some improvements. And this is our last large project that came out of those bond funds. So very excited to have those programs up and running. We still have 16 kids on the waiting list, which is a great opportunity for future years as we look to fill those programs. We have a couple new curricular implementations in our district that are taking place. We're in the 2nd year of a program that we adopted through our whole system all the way up through 12th grade called Eureka Math Squared. It's kind of a spiraling curriculum that uses math fluency and a lot of real world application to help kids not just understand concepts, but put them into practice. This was a huge expense and implementation last year that came out of instructional operational funds. As Dan mentioned, in the general fund and supplemental general, we categorize some of those funds specifically for purchases like resources and curricular materials such as this. At the secondary level this year, we're implementing a brand new English language arts resource through Springboard. So we're in the 1st year of that, but already in year 2 of Eureka Math Squared, we saw some amazing improvements on the Kansas assessment in the area of math. So excited about that improvement as well. Our high school switch to a block schedule this year was something that we brought to our staff and site councils, PTA groups last year, trying to make the argument that having some longer block schedules for kids would help our students take the direct instruction that they receive in a class period and put it into use through hands-on activities, lab-based activities. It has been particularly helpful this year in our career and tech ed programs. The young man on in the picture on the far right in our auto tech program, which is a full service auto shop run out of Turner High School, gets to enjoy that block for an hour and a half, an hour and 35 minutes twice a week. So just a lot longer time to develop those skills in the course of a class period. Shameless plug, if you're looking for some car work, that auto shop is open to the community, and they're happy to service your vehicle there at very economical prices. We've seen a couple other kind of side benefits to this schedule change. Having half of the transitions in the hallways during the day has brought less disruption, frankly, during those passing periods. And the feedback overall has been very positive. We did have to add a couple of positions at Turner High School to fully implement this schedule. And those two full-time equivalent teaching positions were funded through the general operational funds. Thank you to you, and excited to kick off the KCK PD call taker and Sheriff's Office Correctional Cadet programs at Turner High School this year. We're expecting at least 10 strong applicants from our seniors who would participate in these programs during the second semester of their senior years. The students are paid, receive high school elective credit to participate in these programs. KCK PD, Sheriff's Department, Unified Government, HR visited our students and worked with them to talk through the benefits of these programs and get them started on the application process. So we expect those to roll in, and we have some excited kids in our criminal pathway looking at this program. Another new change we brought on to our district this year took place in a couple of our elementary schools so far. We have 3 more that we're going to tackle by the end of the upcoming summer. We replaced a 15-year-old smartboard implementation with new Promethean boards, which as they look are interactive, multi-touch LED displays that kids and teachers can interact with. They're powered by an Android operating system inside. So just a huge enhancement to the old projector-based smartboard systems that we had. This was a very large capital outlay expense. The removal of all of those old boards and then the purchase across a district with 300 plus classrooms was a large undertaking. And we stripped those teaching walls back to the core so that we could run wiring and make them look professional and nice for our classrooms. So that has been a very positive change. Our high school also received new televisions installed with Apple TVs that teachers can then use their mobile device, their MacBook or iPad to stream to. So another great change funded through capital outlay dollars. At no cost to us, but through partnership with KC Crime Stoppers this year, we launched a tip hotline essentially for our kids and community and staff so that they can anonymously report a tip, a concern related to mental health, drugs, weapons, threats, any kind of concern at the school level or at the in the law enforcement level that would allow a quick and efficient response that's done without the person making the tip to disclose who they are. So this QR code has been posted around our high school and communicated with our kids and families so they can go right to the KC Crime Stoppers website. Those tips are kind of scrubbed out. So if whatever was for lunch that day wasn't, appealing to somebody, we're not necessarily going to take up department resources because the pizza was not the topping they wanted or whatever. But those concerns that are kind of school-based come directly to our school administrators. The concerns that are potentially threatening or disruptive to our school environment are vetted by law enforcement and routed through our district school resource officer. So excited to have that program underway as well. One last capital outlay improvement that we made in our community that I really hope you get the opportunity to check out at some point are renovations to our aquatic center. The school district partners with the Turner Recreation Commission to co-fund and co-operate an aquatic center. That space was built in 2000 and this last summer was completely rehabbed from pool paint to pool deck, tile, light fixtures, bleachers, timing system, the whole thing. So that space is just a beautiful brand new environment for our kids. We do teach every one of our second graders to swim during the school day in our school district. So they get to experience that space as well as our community and our swim programs. We also have brand new management leadership at the Aquatic Center. So just lots of wonderful improvements there. If you're in the area, I'd encourage you to check it out, and feel free to contact me if you'd like a tour. Just a couple kind of references to our budget for this year. This circle graph represents our total annual expenditures. The vast majority of our expenditures, like most school districts, goes to pay staff salaries, benefits. We're right at 2/3 of our total expenditures going toward our staff members. Our other budgetary expenditures are split up on things like utilities, heat, electric, curricular resources, paying those debt service payments like Dan referenced. When we passed that bond in 2019, we took out debt with a debt repayment schedule. And so we levy some money each year in order to keep up with those obligations. Capital outlay, funding those Promethean boards and displays at the high school level, food service, custodial, facilities, grounds, maintenance, supplies, and then our different insurances that we carry to cover our facilities and people. Lastly, I included a snapshot of our 10-year tax levy in Turner. For the past few years, it has hovered right around 61 mills. We do levy 7 mills for our rec commission. 6 of those go to their general fund, 1 to their rec benefits fund. We also have a 20 mil, like everyone else, levy for the general fund. Our local option budget is set at 31% of our general fund, which equates to 13.4 mils. Our capital is set at 8. The last few years, it has actually been less than published because of pending appeals that related added back into the valuation calculation. So we would anticipate if that trend continues, that 8 will drop to something probably, in the low 7s, I would guess. We did make a conscious effort to lower our bond and interest by nearly $500,000 this year because of the increase in valuation. We were able to keep the dollars adequate to fund our debt payments. So all of those efforts combined left us at 61.443 for this year. And that is kind of a summary of new things in our district and some of the budget implications. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Bonner.
Thanks, Mayor. On the very back page with the tax levies.
Yes.
Notice in 2015-16, it bumped 7 some odd mills in your supplemental general, and then bumped it back down following year, then up and then down, and it's basically stayed down. But why? Why did those increases in the mill levy rate happen, but then you were able to bring them back down?
Sure. There are a couple variables that factor into the supplemental general budget. One is the percentage of the general fund that we have set the supplemental general budget at. Okay, I'll try not to get too deep into the weeds, but like Dan said, that general operating fund is set at 20 mills and based on enrollment and weightings. So if our enrollment increases or decreases, because the supplemental general fund is based on a percentage of the general fund, the student enrollment, student weightings, increase in base state aid at the state level will have a ripple effect on the supplemental general fund. So if the general fund increases, supplemental general fund is likely going to increase. Districts also have some discretion on the percentage of the general fund that they levy. Dan said the max is 33, and Turner we're at 31%. So not at the max in that particular area. As far as that fluctuation in the year, there may have been some impact by the assessed valuation in the district. If the assessed valuation drops, there is an absolute guarantee that supplemental general is going to spike pretty significantly. And if that was one of those years where there was a drop in assessed valuation, that could have explained the spike. And then us holding more cash over from the year with 19 mills to the year with 14 mills could have helped offset and stabilize that after we saw the spike and attempted to correct it. Does that help?
It's helpful. So my second question
Sure.
is, the Aquatic Center was built in 2020. Do you have any idea what was spent to build that?
I believe it was about 4.3 million. off
20
the
years
top of my
ago,
head.
it was 4.3. I mean, it's fabulous. And then do you have a notion of what its annual maintenance?
Oh,
costs
gosh.
are? I can,
All in with staff and maintenance, we're probably pushing about $300,000.
okay, thanks.
Sure.
That's it.
Commissioner Maris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will hold my question for a one-on-one conversation because I feel it kind of pertains to this. It pertains to Recreation Commission and just how it's related, how they're interconnected with our Parks Department and how they're not. I think that'll just be an offsite conversation I can have with you so that we can just continue the presentations.
Yeah, I'll connect with you before the night and we'll set a time.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. It's nice to be here with you today. I want to thank Dan and Jason for teeing us up and giving you some great information. I'm going to share some of the same information a little bit of a different way in view of the Piper School District and how we share some of this information. It can be very complicated for our patrons to understand it. So I thought I'd share some different graphics along with the same information, but a little bit of a different way. So what you see here is when our patrons start talking to us about taxes, they get very confused about all the entities that tax them. So as we were going out for a bond a couple of years ago, we used this graphic so they could really see here in Wyandotte County where exactly the breakdown was by the dollar. So this has been a graphic that's been very helpful for our community in Piper to understand the difference between the county taxes, the school district taxes, KCKCC, the library, et cetera. Here what we have for you. So Dan did a great job of setting up the district mill levies. So we've given you here a 3-year history of what these mill levy these numbers have been for us. So you'll notice from 22 to 23, we had a little bit of a jump. If you look at that total levy, that's because in January of 22, we passed a school bond. And so you see then that next year where those levies went up just a little bit, especially in that bond and interest, which then made our total levy numbers go up just a little bit. From there, then, for your viewing pleasure, you can just see here we have the last 10 years and what that looks like for you. You see we were for several years in that the high 50s, went down a little bit, and then we had a bond that took us back up. So that's just been a nice historical picture for us. This is another way of looking at it for our patrons. So at the bottom are those 5. We really try to talk to them about those 5 different levies. And then when they add them together, that's that top blue line. So again, it's that same information just shared with them in a little bit of a different way. This graph is kind of difficult to see on the screen, but hopefully if you have a paper, this is really interesting for us to look at as we look at the county and as we look at neighboring school districts. So on that, Piper is circled so you can see where we are. And so when I talk to our patrons, it's easy for me to point this out to them. The bottom red line is where we are with our 5 mill levies as a school district. And then the top red line up there is where we are as a school district when we look at all municipalities and how people are taxed, all jurisdictions. So that's another graph that makes things a little bit easier for our patrons to understand where we are. This is information for you to see, again, the difference between local and state aid and adding those together and what those look like for our total budget. So this was our published budget for 23-24. And then from here, this is similar but different to the graph that Dr. Dan Doy just shared with us. So this comes from the state report, but this would show you by function where our funding goes. So a lot of that goes to the instruction, student support services, instructional support services, and administration and support. So again, that would go to paying our employees and then our instructional resources. So here's some data that's really interesting for us right now in the Piper School District. Although we are small compared to our neighbors USD 500, we actually are the 3rd fastest growing school district in the state of Kansas. So you can see where we were last year. This was our count on August 29th, so not even our September 20th count. But that last column you have there is where we were projected to be in 26, 27. So we're anticipating by the end of this school year that we will meet that projection, and that's still 2 to 3 years out. So while we work with a firm that gives us very specific demographics, we still are growing so quickly that planning for the future is incredibly important to us. Dan talked to you about deferred maintenance and capital outlay. So you either pay it now or you pay it then. When I came into the district 4 years ago, the district had over $15 million of deferred maintenance. So when you go out for a bond, that's really difficult. That's not the super cool, pretty sexy stuff that patrons want to hear about. But yet at the same time, if you're not taking care of those capital improvements, they can catch up with you very quickly. So I have some pictures here and you can go through these at your leisure, but as part of our bond, these are the items that we've been able to take care of with 15 million of that $64 million in our bond that we just passed. Like Dr. Dandoy shared, we also have added the interactive flat panels to our classrooms. We've added one-to-one devices to our classrooms. We are getting ready. We have an early childhood center, but we are expanding that. So these are the construction plans for what that will look like for us. So an old elementary building will come a full-size early childhood center. And then our plans are to hopefully add a birth through 3 component to this so that families can actually have their students in our system from birth, because we know the earlier intervention students get, the better. So these are some pictures of what that early childhood center is going to look like. And I'll click through these really quickly for you. A big piece of what we're adding to our early childhood center are bathrooms. Bathrooms are actually part of the curriculum when you're 3 and 4 years old. So it'll be nice that each one of the classrooms will have those. At Piper Prairie, this is one of our newer elementary buildings. So you see here where we've invested in the paint, the carpet, just those overall things like you do at your own house, just to keep things maintained. We call these our beautification efforts. Piper Creek Elementary, this is our current middle school that's going to be converted into an elementary school. So this was a rendering of what our new commons was going to look like, and that's how it turned out. So we're really excited. We doubled the space in our cafeteria so that they don't start serving lunch at 8:55 in the morning anymore. This is a rendering of the office. So I'll go through these rather quickly. Commissioner Kane said I needed to stay on my time limit. So our middle school students are going to move to the high school. They're very excited about getting their lockers. But this is really the crowning jewel of what we're doing in our $64 million bond. So we have Piper Creek Elementary School right now. 2 bonds ago, we went out to the community and that bond did not pass. So they went out in 2018 and they built an elementary school right now, Piper Creek, which is really phase 1 of an elementary school, of the high school. And so what we're doing with this bond is actually completing that high school. So our students will move into that and building that to be a 6A high school. So really trying to plan for the future. So these give you some pictures of what this is going to look like, our commons, our learning stairs. Our building's going to be different in that it will be organized by our academies. So those 6 academies are right there. So instead of having English, math, science, social studies in different hallways, we're going to have our academies together. So they really have an integrated multidisciplinary approach to what this will look like. And then every academy will have a lab that will have hands-on instructional materials and equipment. So this is a media lab, but for our fire and safety, we actually just, and I'll share that with you, but we may have some hospital beds in there, EMT equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea here is that when you're a freshman and a sophomore, you're walking through here and you're going to see all the great things that you can do. And these are all tied to future academies for us. So this is a real world learning science classroom. This isn't a chemistry classroom like when you and I went to school. We're creating these classrooms to look like what it will look like when they go out into the real world. We don't talk about just going to college, but we talk about when you go out into the real world, because not all of our kids are going to college, or they may take a different path. They may go somewhere and work first, and then that company may pay for college. So again, this high school is going to look a lot more like a college campus and what industry setting will look like for them. This is our theater lab. We actually have platforms that will go on top of all those stairs that you see on the bottom level. So this multi-space can then become an area where we could have a gala, a banquet. So really using every inch of this space in a lot of different ways for our community. We're excited about what the athletic pieces we're going to be adding to this. And what I really want to share with you, and this is what you see in the audio visual equipment there. So two exciting things that we're doing. One is we're going to be selling sponsorships. So where you see there where it says Pirates, partner, anchor, partner, our sports marketing kids are going to be going out and selling. They're going to be selling those sponsorships where we can actually create revenue for the school district from these ads. The second thing that you see up there are the audio visual. So that's the video that will come up, the play-by-play. Our kids are learning the curriculum, so they will be running the scoreboards at all of our football games, volleyball games, et cetera. So again, really wanting to have a building where every inch of it is going to be a learning opportunity for students. We're going to have an indoor gym. So there's the floor. We're really excited about that. And then this just gives you an overview of what the facilities will look like. We are going to be able to build in a competition-ready softball and baseball complex, locker rooms, parking. If you've been to our complex, you know that right now our baseball and softball really need some help. So we're super excited that this was prioritized for them. Both the boys and the girls, the softball and baseball will have the full-size audio visual. So if you've ever been to ODAC or CDAC in Olathe or some of those other places, where they have those jumbotrons, that's what that will look like. And again, our kids will sell those sponsorships and our kids will be running the audio visual for all of those games. So there are a few more pictures in that. What I really wanted to show you a couple of pictures is this doesn't future ready for us. Actually is not just at the high school level, but now our goal is a district that we're looking at this as a K through 12 opportunity. So we can start learning about ourselves, start learning about jobs, and then we get more specific before they go to high school. So at the kindergarten level, they partnered with some local farmers, and then they had a big egg sale and then they got to watch chickens hatch. So that was really fun for them. In first grade, they worked with professionals in the field of weather and safety, and they made preparedness kits. So they were ready for the storms and they understood what they needed to go home and have mom and dad be ready for if something would move in. In second grade, we had a big plant sale. So they learned about plants. We have a greenhouse on campus. And so then our community got to come in and actually buy the plants that they had spent the spring growing. In third grade, they had a history lesson and really looked at biographies, and then they got to dress up as their person and invited the community to come in and learn from them. In fourth grade, they learned about Kansas in a museum centered around providing exposure and knowledge to the cultivated engaging activities. So again, learning about the state of Kansas. And then in fifth grade, they got into weather. They had BPU and some other conservation companies come out and talk to them about what that means for the environment. So lastly, what I want to summarize is the amazing partnership that we have right now with the UG, with Wyandotte County, and the idea, Mayor, I'm always really pleased when you come out and talk to our kids about how much you value them and you want them to stay in the community. And so as Superintendent Dan Doy talked about, we're doing the same thing right now with our students. So right now we have students that are working with the UG. There's going to be a new roundabout at Leavenworth and Hutton Road in Piper. So you probably know that area. Our students are actually working with the engineers and the designers to help create that and what that will look like. So that will be an amazing opportunity for our students. As Jason talked about, we also have the correctional cadet internship and the 911 caller cadet internship. And again, the amazing things about these opportunities is not only will these students go through them, but there will be a direct pipeline for them to find employment and continue their career right after high school. So again, it keeps them in the community and keeps them working in an area where we have a lot of jobs here. With our public health department, we have students that are working with the health department. They're going through a 5-center rotation, and they'll understand what it's like to work at the health department and the resources. So these are kids that are going into health, but they may not be interested in just being doctors. So we want to show them all of those opportunities with the health department. This was a really exciting full circle opportunity. So we had some students that are going into construction. They worked with the Ag Hall of Wyandotte County, and they also worked with Universal Construction. And the president of Universal Construction is actually a Piper graduate. So it was really exciting for them to work with him, and they put in a new ADA ramp out there. And he shared that he actually helped build the original ADA ramp with his dad when he was a kid. So it was a really fun full circle moment for our kids. And then lastly, what we're really excited about is we have a great partnership with KCK Fire Department. We do own a house on 123rd right now. That eventually we're going to use for something else. But right now we have a partnership and the fire department uses that as a training facility. You know, we have a station right next door to that. So we see a lot of firemen and women come in and out of there and do skill training. And then a week ago, we were able to surprise our students in this academy with a fire truck that is 100% theirs, so they can understand how it works. But it's not just being a fire person with this job, but they understand the jobs of the EMT. They understand how to drive it. They understand how to fill the hose. They understand all the equipment and the periphery jobs that go along with being a fire person. So we're really excited about real world learning and what that means. But more importantly, we really appreciate these pipelines that are going right back into our community here in Wyandotte. So with that, I will stop and see if you have any questions.
I think Commissioner Kane, you had a question?
Well, I hate to say this in front of everybody, but since Superintendent Dane's been there, there's been a very large change in where the kids can go. Because with the very first thing we talked about, not everyone's ready for college. And that fire truck's a perfect example of getting our kids to learn something so they can get these good jobs here in Wyandotte County. So you've done a great job. Your school board's done a great job, and we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Anna Stubblefield, Superintendent for Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, and I'm the final superintendent tonight. What I will start with is what our theme of this year is for us to get better every day. So when we're looking at, am I going the right way? Within our strategic plan, and whether we're thinking about, and I don't know if you can see it, we have 5 themes, and the 5th theme, since we're talking about budget, is around being fiscally responsible. But all the decisions that we make within our system are in order for us to get to our North Star, which is for by 2031 for 100% of our students to graduate with a diploma plus. So where I'm asked Randy to help me is I did bring out our diploma plus department and our HR department provides a lot of information about what's happening with our students. And I won't spend a lot of, and I'll skip over that component. But our Diploma Plus program is focused on work experience, college credit, industry recognized credentials, and entrepreneurial experience. And so all of the things that Dr. Dane and Dr. Dan Doig talked about, we replicate as well. I will actually give you like hard handouts to cover some of our projects and those kind of things. But I do want to highlight that we have some of the same partnerships with the UG, as well as Kansas City, Kansas Community College. And as the first presentation you heard, we have a partnership with the Health Foundation. So we are constantly looking for opportunities for our students to get real world experiences, whether they go to college or into a career. We want them to continue to be contributing community members within Wyandotte County. So Randy has those, and anybody here that wants them. We also have our recruiting magazine and some other things that I'll leave with you. But everyone, the gift in being last, everyone has basically talked about all of the things that I'm going to talk about, so I don't have to spend a lot of time on those. But this slide is just highlighting our operating unrestricted budget versus our federal restricted budget. And it shows you that 69% of our total district budget is for operating expenses. And it shows you that 80% of our operating unrestricted budget is spent on like salaries and benefits. This is another way for you to look at that. Our general fund and state aid, we get about 55% of our budget from there. And then it shows you all of the other areas. What I do want to highlight Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools did receive $53 million, which was about 15% of our operating revenue for the 23-24 school year. That money was one-time money and it is going away in September of 24. We have used it to invest in both curriculum and instruction that was impacted by COVID, but we also used it to upgrade our HVAC systems and some other areas that were directly linked to COVID. So anything that we used that money on had to be related to the pandemic. So right now we're going through the process while we were able to add additional staff, buy curriculum, try out new programs, and we did see growth in our academics across that. We don't have like $53 million that's coming in. So now we have to make decisions about those things that weren't one-time expenses in order for it to be built into our budget moving forward, starting in 24-25. And $53 million is a lot of money, and going through that process with our staff and our board with intentionality while we're focusing on our North Star and our strategic plan will have a direct impact on our budget and our staff and our spending. This is just to show you our actuals for 22-23. This was our actual non-operating dollars that we spent. One of the things that has not been mentioned, but we, KCK, Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, we host, we sponsor the special ed co-op that Piper and Bonner are a part of. And together, that's how we provide services for all of our students who may be on an individualized education plan. This is another version of what our anticipated for this year non-operating revenue will be. And again, as you can see, a large portion of it is spent on like the capers flow through. Some of that sometimes confuse people, but this shows you how it's broken down in percentages from a different version. This is our total expenses, and it highlights that 84% of our total expenses goes to salary and benefits without including the ESSER dollars. This shows you a history of our mill levy from 2005 until 2023. And similar to others who presented, it shows there were some times when it was higher and lower, but since 2015, we've been pretty steady around about the same levels. And one of the things, like each year, as we are looking at our budget and, assess evaluation, the reality for all of the districts are there are certain things that no matter what happened, there's going to be increased costs. So it's it's not realistic for us to think that we can reduce our budget when we don't control things like utilities, fuel for transportation, special education requirements, and the other things that are there that each year, just with the fact of inflation and the cost of living, those things increase costs annually. So as we are navigating our budgets, we have to plan for those. And sometimes we can predict at a better rate than others, and other times we really are operating off of what's the real cost of that particular day. And I think that is my last slide. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or talk to you about what I shared.
Mr. Bonner.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, I just have all these questions. So it's very interesting to hear from all of the school districts, and I sincerely appreciate it. In the case of USD 500, you also, your Board of Education also not only sets your budget for your district, but the KCK library system. And it's set, I think, as a separate item from your budget. Is that correct?
That is
it's its
correct.
Own system.
It's its own system.
Okay.
And it one of the unique things about that, while our board approves it, in that there is a different board that goes through, and what is it, the library, Wyandotte County Library?
The Wine, well, that, and not to, go too deep into it, to the Wyandotte County Library Board, that is people we appoint.
Mhm.
They set the rate outside of USD 500.
Correct.
But they do not set your rate.
No, but the library executive director brings forth based off of all of that information that is happening there. But our board does, yes.
Okay, and it's just entirely separate from this budget. And
It's
everything
not,
you
a
walked
part. It's
through.
two different budgets. Everything is separate of those two.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah.
The way that our library systems are set up here in Wyandotte County.
Yeah, and I will say, I think it may be one of two in the entire country. It may be the last one. I have no
think
actual
that's-
information, but I now understand that it's the last one. It is
Okay,
the last one in
that's
the
what I
entire
thought as well.
country.
And just to transition over, I know that USD 500, you own and operate your own transportation.
We do.
And
yes.
so, because I'm noticing, like, one of the things you show is increasing costless buses. So has the board had discussion about sustainability and climate and things like that as it relates to your transportation systems, i.e. are you using CNG buses or beginning to invest in electric, that sort of thing?
So we did 2 years ago apply for a grant for electric buses. We did not get selected, got feedback, and then we were applying again. So we have been exploring it. But the build out for just the charging stations alone is a very large cost. So when you're making those kind of decisions, you either have to decide like you're not going to do something else. So ideally for us to start to move in that direction, hopefully we'll get selected in one of the grant programs where because we still have to provide, like we can't just say we're going to take these 10 buses and then build this out, because we have so many kids that we transport. While we get reimbursed for 2.5 miles at the elementary level, we transport anybody who lives more than 0.8 miles, and at the middle and high school, more than 1.5 miles, because we recognize, similar to what Dan shared, that there are some challenges for some of our students depending on where they live, if the roads are not walkable and those kind of things. So we do transport many more students than we actually get reimbursement for. So a large portion of our budget in transportation is not reimbursed.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How are, just curious, and it can be a quick response or again, like they have superintendent, but side conversation to have. How are other library systems operated and set up?
In other cities or
Yeah.
counties, they operate independently. They're not a part of the school district.
Okay.
So and it's state statute, it's somebody else who has it. So in order to separate the two, it has to go through the legislators. Like our board can't just vote and say we're going to separate. It's a state statute that. So if that is something that is of interest, it would probably need to go to the legislators or somebody, but it's not a choice that any board in the history of USD 500 made a determination of. And we're the last one. So if somebody wanted to do research to see how they if that is the desire or question, but that we're the only one in the country that still operates in that manner.
Oh, okay. I was curious. I did not know that it was set by state statute.
Yes, this is not like the decision of the local school board or anyone at the local level.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This evening I have with me the Chair of our Board of Trustees, Ms. Evelyn Criswell.
Thank you, Dr. Mosher. As Chair of the Kansas City, Kansas Community College Board of Trustees, it is my privilege to speak at this meeting. In the interest of time, I will of course be brief and allow, of course, time for Dr. Mosher's presentation, but I wanted to just share a little bit about our Board of Trustees. We're a locally controlled board, consisting of 7 trustees. 2 of our major responsibilities are, of course, fiscal management and then also policy and procedure management. The board is, of course, tasked with the responsibility of setting the college budget, and our annual budget process begins in late February, early March of each year, of course. The college, just something interesting, and I think many of you are already aware of this, but the college has raised over $40 million for the downtown campus project. And we've reduced our mill levy in order to help to relieve the tax burden on our citizens. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the college, I cannot express how proud we are to be partnering with you in creating a viable and impactful future for Wyandotte County. Mr. Mayor, County Administration, and Commissioners, we could not have come this far without the work that we're doing with you and without your supports. We just wanted to personally thank you for your consideration and excellent decisions that have allowed the college to continue to move forward. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Mosher for the financial presentation. Just a quick note, if you all will pardon me, I actually need to be pulling out of my driveway in about 15 minutes. I'm on the way out of town, but I just wanted to, again, just thank you so much for everything. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate you taking time to come tonight with your schedule. All right. So we're really pleased to present to you tonight on how we operate our budget and some of the successes that we've had. This has become one of my favorite quotes. Education is truly one of the most powerful instruments for reducing poverty and inequality. And that's something that all of us here as educators have been, really devoted our life to. So we all hold that very closely. Just a little quick FYI, some fast facts about KCKCC. We are the 3rd largest community college in the state of Kansas. We serve about 8,000 students per year in credit and non-credit courses. You can see we have about 52% of our students reside in Wyandotte County and 20% in Leavenworth County. Those are our service regions. So 72% of the students that we serve are in and live in our service regions. And about 24% of our students come from the high schools, from the individuals that we're presenting here tonight to help them get a jump start on their career advancement or educational advancement. You've seen this slide before, and you've seen many of my images during this last year, but I share this with you again, as this is the slide of the county and the poverty by census tract, which represents the student socioeconomic demographic that KCKCC serves. And even with as much of our population that we have, especially those living on the eastern side of the county who live in poverty every single day, we're really excited about the results that we're having. So in where it says KCKCC 19 CCs, that's our community college system in the state. So out of the 19 community colleges, KCKCC is number 1 in minority success with our Black and African American males and females. And we're number 2 in success of our Hispanic males as well, and number 4 with our Hispanic females. So we're very proud of that. When compared at the national level, IPEDS is a national data collection organization. We have peer institutions. There are 32 institutions in each peer group. So of the 32 institutions, our achievement gap of our Black students is 3% less than the national average. The gap in education overall, where we have about 32% graduation rate, which is, it seems rather low, but it also doesn't take into consideration those students that transfer to a four-year institution who never intended to complete their associate degree at KCKCC, or they came for some IT classes and cybersecurity classes, and they bumped their salary by $30,000 a year, but their goal was never completion. So we have to think about the students that we serve. Our Black and African American graduation rate is 25%. Nationally, it's 17% with our peers, and Hispanic at 31%, and our peers are at 26%. So comparatively, we're doing really well, and we want to continue to increase those percentages. On the box on the right, you can see those are our certificates. So of about our 1,000 students who graduated this last year, 520 of them had certificates. That tells you a lot about what's happening in our economy and what's desired by our employers, because they are looking for very specific skills, and they can learn those in a certificate program. Our industrial maintenance technology certificate is 1 semester. And as I've shared with you before, the students who complete that certificate, their base pay is $50,000 to $60,000 a year after 1 semester, and are making over $100,000 a year with overtime because the county is so short on individuals with expertise in that area. The 2-year degree, the average starting salary is about $75,000 a year, and they're making upwards of $150,000 a year after a 2-year degree. And that's one of the best things we do, is we create taxpayers. Some of our accomplishments of this last year. So we have Centennial Hall, which is now been open for 1 year. It is 100% full with a waiting list, and people gave up on the waiting list and stopped giving names. And our director of housing says we probably about have 80 additional people that wanted to get into Centennial Hall. It's not common for community colleges to have student residencies, and especially in an urban area. So Johnson, MCC, they don't have student housing, but we do. And you can see there's just a great demand for that with a housing shortage across the country. Other accomplishments are our music program. Our music students just, they're just knocking it out of the park. We won again 15 Downbeat Awards this year. We won 15 last year. So we're tied with the Berklee College of Music, and we are the highest award recipient community college in the country in Downbeat Awards. So great progress there, success. We put a lot of emphasis in education. So our student athletes, and we say students first on purpose, because they are students and then they are athletes. We had 83 of our students recognized for academic success with a GPA over a 3.0. We're doing more with research, undergraduate research projects for those students who are wanting to go on to 4-year degrees. So they have this as part of their academic portfolio. And the second one we had this year, we had over 400 people attend from all over the state. So technical, athletic, music, research, really trying to make sure that we hit all the areas. So as we move into our budget area, I just want to visit a bit about how we go about our budget. So our mission and our vision statement is there as always a reminder. And when we're working on the budget, we're really focusing on both the present and the future, because we have to meet the needs of the present community and what the business and industry and family communities. But we also have to not lose sight that we're responsible for building the future for our next 100 years. And how are we going to do that and set KCKCC up for success moving forward? So I take a very outcome-based budgeting process. And it looks at our college's strategic plan outcomes, the Board of Trustees and the President Cabinet annual goals. We put all of that together and we identify what that's going to cost. So we actually do our expenses first. Then when we look at what our potential revenues are, then we know, do we need to cut back on some of our goals if there's not enough money to achieve them all, to do what we want? Or, do we look at putting some additional money into reserves? Or like this year, we had additional money, about 1.8 million. So our decision was to give that back to the community because we didn't need it to accomplish our goals for this next year. Our expenses are, we're very fiscally sound and really detail oriented. Our salaries and benefits is 50% instead of typically is in the 60s. 15% supplies and other capital and plants about 10%. And you can see these other numbers as it works up the scale. So some of the expense highlights that we have for this fiscal year, salaries and benefits is an increase of about $2.7 million. That includes a 3% employee pay increase, which is not much anymore. When you look at escalation, 10% increase to our health insurance costs. We do about $150,000, $200,000 a year for finding pay inequities and making equity adjustments in positions that we have across the college. New positions, we have 5 new positions, 2 faculty positions hired, and other staff positions, contractual services that are shown for just about $500,000. Scholarships and financial aid is about $7 million. Institutional scholarships, we grant about $1 million a year in institutional scholarships for our students. Fees for scholarships, we bring, there's about $525,000 that we collect through the student fee, other waivers. We do strategic opportunities as an item that people will apply for, departments will apply for, and then it goes through a process, decision-making process to see if we do that. And it's to improve certain areas. It's about 1.25 million. Contingency, 350,000. Service on debt is about 300,000. Here's just some other items that we are looking at for our expenses this year. We're going to start a construction program build out. So we'll have that. A high voltage is going, there's $750,000 identified for that space and equipment. The whole launch is going to be about $2 million. We're pulling other money from reserves to that. Switches, electrical, field house improvements, and parking lot improvements, and then other capital expenses. So when we went through that whole process, we came up with our total proposed operating expenses, and we started with the flat mill levy. It's about $95 million. Revenue neutral is less because the total dollars are less. So our calculation, which would go into reserves, is decreased by the total proposed revenue. And so you can see at a revenue neutral, we would be short $4 million. Flat mill levy, we would be up $1.6 million from what we proposed to do this next year. So we looked at mill reductions and we landed on a 1 mill reduction, which puts us about $174,000 short for the year, but we'll, we always don't have full staffing and such, so we'd be able to account for that. So that is from a flat mill that's returning 33% of the money that we could have collected if we stayed flat. We're returning that to the citizens of Wyandotte County, and that makes our total budget increase only about 4% for this next fiscal year. This is just another breakdown of where the dollars are being spent for you to study in your own time and ask questions if you would like later. Where the money comes from, as you saw with our superintendents, their local mill levy then is matched by state, about a 3-to-1. Well, we don't have that. USD 500 with Dr. Stubblefield was just mentioning about 55% of their budget comes from state revenue. Well, about 55% of our budget comes from local mill revenue. So you can see how important that is to the fiscal operations of the college. Up top is a 10-year mill levy history. And as you've heard the other superintendents speak, we are basically flat from where we were 10 years ago. And the other thing that I do want to emphasize is we talk mill levy reductions. A mill is not a mill, right? So with the examples that we've had tonight, if we look at the mill and its relationship to the percentage of a total budget, 1 mill for us is about 2% of our budget. These are not exact dollars, so I understand that. With the unified government, the average of your 2 mills is about 1.93, with a proposed budget of about 460 million. So it's about 1 mill is about 0.42% of your budget. With this is average with the USDs. 1 mill is for 500 is about 354 million of their total budget. So it's about 0.5%. So across KCC's 1 mill reduction total impact would be the equivalent of the UG cutting 5.5 mills approximately as a relationship to the budget, and with the school districts about 3.5 mills. So 1 mill is significantly more for the college than it is for the other taxing entities. We saw a little bit of this slide earlier. So as we look at what percentage of the tax dollars and where it's going to in Wyandotte County, you can see KCC is about 16 cents on the dollar across the board. That remains consistent in the different school districts as well. So excluding the library, the college has the lowest mill rate of all taxing entities in the Wyandotte County. Even so, with what we are trying to do, really to bring up the educational level and decrease the poverty level in Eastern Wyandotte County, we're really looking at taking that block and turning it into an engine for prosperity. As Trustee Criswell mentioned, we've raised about $40 million. We're actually about at $50 million right now. 2.9 of that still needs to be passed in the federal budget this year. Last Saturday, a couple of Fridays ago, Community America Credit Union donated $1 million to the project. So we're really saving taxpayers money. It's about 18 cents on the dollar for Wyandotte County residents for the investment that's going to take place down in the center of KCK. So we're really happy and proud of what we're doing. We believe in education and how significant it is to the economic development and growth of a community. And with that, I will go ahead and stop. And I understand that we have a video, a short, almost 2-minute video we'd like to share with you. This is truly an exciting day for us all. Today marks the new beginning of the Kansas City campus. And right here, we will be turning light into bright. Here together, we'll make lifelong dreams come true for countless people over many generations to come. I'd like to thank all of our donors for the project so far. This is our centennial year. You're laying the foundation for the next 100 years. KCC will be offering programs and services that are specifically needed and desired
And being more excited to be a part of it. The fact that we're all gonna lock arms and bring growth and prosperity to this wonderful community, I think that's
Keys to improve destiny for Wyandotte County starts right here. I always have said that the first step to hope, the second step to opportunity, and the third step to improve destiny starts with an education. Education is a key component for the future. What this event today symbolizes to me is there's a lot of people in this community, in this gathering this morning, who decided they're going to make sure that the American dream is alive and well for those yet to come to Wyandotte County, into Northeast Kansas, to our state, to our country.
Commission, I hope that this was valuable information for you. You need to be aware of the investment that our taxpayers are making in order to have a thriving community. I believe that these presentations gave you a sufficient detail to understand that the education community is in partnership with this commission and our economic development team in ensuring that we have the citizens that are equipped to not only live here, but to thrive within our community. I thank you for your time. If there are any additional questions, we are certainly open to them. But this does conclude the presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Rios, Mr. Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you. First, I want to acknowledge Bonner Springs Superintendent. Dan, that formula that you expressed to us and gave us the guideline is one of the most difficult formulas that I personally have ever encountered in the legislature. The only one that combats that is the gaming formula on how to break out the gaming dollars. But I will share with you that I really do appreciate you breaking that down to educate the public. So kudos to you for expressing, Mr. Brengart, everything that goes into the education formula and how it works. And I do want to thank Dr. Dandoy for presenting a picture of what it means to reinvest in a school facility that is in a challenged part of our community, but still is able to meet the fiscal responsibility necessary to provide one of the only aquatic centers that we have in the area. So I do sincerely appreciate that. I've watched that school grow from not having what I would call a certified football field into having a new sports mecca, including the Aqua Center. So kudos to your leadership and your team. The only question I would have, and the only place I found it, and I've been trying to look through my notes, is every one of your mill levies that you put together for 2024 to help us look at what the collective mill levy will be. And I believe I had the KCC at 2635. Would that be correct? Dr. Mosier, that was the 1 mill reduction. And by the time you laid it all out, it was 26.35.
Yeah, it's 26.3 something. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. KCK, it was difficult to pull out your mill levy. I was trying to pull that mill levy number out from what it was last year to this year.
It's right under 50. It's like 49 point something.
Thank you. I'll put 49.5. I'll split it with you. And Dr. Brungar, I know that you guys lowered your mill, if I remember correctly. I'd just like to kind of get a grip on what the total mill levy is, if I may.
It's Dan Brungard, not Dr. Brungard. 53.293.
53.292. Thank you. And Piper? You're saving me the work. You all know those numbers better than we do.
The total, is that what you're asking me?
Yes, the mill levy
Yes,
for this
that's
2024.
62.5.
53.5? 62.5. Thank you so very much. Thank you all for your presentation and your commitment to education in Wyandotte County. Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Maris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just thank you to the superintendents, staff, faculty, school boards for all that you do every day. As I always say, it takes a special type of person to want to work with kids. I do it every day. I love it. Education is my passion and my heart. So I just thank you for all that you do. You're changing lives. Today we received emails from 2 previous students we had at our school who are doing amazing. And so it shows the work that educators do. So just thank you and continue to do the good work.
Thank you. I would be remiss if we did not give our board chairs an opportunity to speak. I know we have Mr. Randy Lopez here with USCI Manager. I don't know if there's any others there, but if you could just take 1 or 2 minutes just to share your thoughts on your board, your superintendents, and on the great things that are going on at the districts.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor, for the invitation. Members of the commission, great to see you all. And again, thank you to all of our superintendents and everyone in education who presented tonight. And thank you for the opportunity to come and just talk about some of the great things that all of our districts are doing in our community to help improve the education of Wyandotte County and of our students and families. I'm just really excited about the things that we're doing in Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools. Our board has been working really hard to ensure that our superintendent, all of our staff and our students have the resources necessary to continue to grow in their education, and so that we can continue to provide the quality education necessary to reach our North Star of our Diploma Plus. Just a couple of other highlights I'll throw in there. This year, we are piloting a dual language education program, starting with kindergartners that are being taught in both English and Spanish, which I think is an amazing thing. And I think that's in 3 schools in the area. And I think that is just something that we will continue to see grow and such an amazing opportunity for our students. So, and we are continuing to find innovative ways to work with our students and engage our families. One other area that I'll highlight is our Welcome Center that we've lifted up and continue to work on. I think this is year 2 that we have our Welcome Center, which is a place that provides wraparound services and resources for all of our students and families that have different needs that they all come with in our district. So a lot of exciting things. I don't want to take up too much more time, but just to say that we appreciate the partnership that we have with the unified government, with our commissioners and with the mayor, and in partnership with all of our other school districts to work together to serve all of our students and families. So thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and to share some words.
Are there any other board chairs here present? Okay, well, thank you all for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Rios. Oh, I'm sorry. We have Commissioner Johnson. I apologize, Commissioner. I believe you had a question, comment?
More of a comment, Mayor. First of all, to you, I want to tell you thank you because of your leadership and certainly of Mr. Rios. We've been able to have these we've had 2 conversations this year. Since I came on board in 2015, I know Commissioner Bynum and I have been talking about these kinds of things, and I can't speak to those that were here before us, but it took up until 2023 for us to be able to have that. So I want to thank you for your leadership. I thank you, Mr. Rios, and thank you to all of the superintendents that come. I think if we can continue to be disciplined in having these dialogues, it will help us overall to figure out how we want to adjust and move in terms of our various mill levies and whatnot. But also, even beyond that, perhaps there might be some areas where we can realize economies of scale. We all are purchasing from some of the same vendors, I'm sure, on things such as paper and staplers and other things, and maybe and gas and who knows, cement, who knows. Maybe if we figure out a way to cobble our efforts together, we can leverage our collective strength to see if we can get better pricing, better consideration for all of us as we move together as one, because we indeed are better together. And so again, I want to thank all of the superintendents. I want to thank the presidents of the boards and the Board of Commissioners here. And Mayor, again, I mean, we've been talking about this since 2015, well, I don't even know when I came on, whenever I came on. So I'm glad as I close out my last couple of months here, to see that we are moving forward with this, and hopefully these type of dialogues will continue into the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. I will echo everything Commissioner Johnson said. Thank you, Mr. Rios. Thank you, Mayor, for putting this together. This has been super, super beneficial. I also echo the sentiment that we absolutely should have this discussion. Perhaps we should have it a little bit earlier on in the budget season. That way we can ascertain what the mill levies will be and what the impact will be. I know I'm just creating more work for somebody, but that will make it a little bit easier, that as we all are going through the budget season, we can kind of balance it out and see what the final impact will be for all of the mill levies and ultimately for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thank you all. Thank Mr. Rios. When the request came from the commission to have this, I gave him the call to action and he got right on it. I know that last year we had brought all the educational leaders together, and you don't see Monsignor here, Swedlin from Donley, but he's also included in this group. The only reason he's not here today is because it's a private institution. He's not a taxing entity per se. But what you've seen is I believe, is improved collaboration and communication between the educational institutions throughout all of Wyandotte County that really is going to be beneficial, not just to our students, but to the future of Wyandotte County when you're talking about having an educated, well-educated citizenry right here in Wyandotte County. So I just want to thank the board. There's several board members here. I don't want to leave you all out that sat through this presentation. Thank you all for being here. The board chair that is here, especially the superintendents, just for making time to have time. This presentation just wasn't of benefit to this Unified Government Commission. For all those individuals that are watching and for all those individuals that will watch at some other time, I know that the information will be of value moving forward. So thank you so much for your time and everything that you brought forward. We do have a full commission meeting. Our staff is going to need at least 20 minutes to get things up and running. And I apologize to the public, but this was vital information. We didn't want to rush these individuals with their presentations. As such, we will reconvene for the full commission meeting in the chambers at exactly 7:15. You can expect that to start to give our staff and our technical teams to get things up for that presentation. I will now take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Clerk, roll call.
Roll call, Stites. Davis.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Ramirez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you all.